You're listening to It Takes a Village, Vancouver Co-op Radio's parenting show on 102.7 FM. I'm your host, Kara Coe, and Molly and Scarlett and Corky are in the studio. Well, actually, they're in the station. They're floating about, but they are here and working on the show today, and we'll have lots of special guests today. First, we have musician Holly Duff and Ross Curran and Rosemary, Holly's daughter, and later we'll have Avi with us from Public Dreams. But first, let me introduce Holly Duff and Ross Curran and Rosemary. Holly Duff received her Bachelor of Music in Performance, and she is a teacher of music, and she is involved with the West Coast Chamber of Music, and they are putting on a production of Peter and the Wolf. Ross Curran is an accomplished musician as well and a teacher, and he does mostly woodwind lessons, and he teaches a lot of young children, orff music to young children, and he is taught at many venues. And Rosemary, I'll let her talk to you more about her, but she's 9 years old, and she's also a musician, and she is Holly Duff's daughter. Welcome to It Takes a Village, Holly and Ross and Rosemary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll ask you first, Holly. Can you tell me a little bit more the name of your organization and what you do and what you're currently doing? What's in the pipeline right now?
Right. Well, the name of our organization is West Coast Chamber of Music, and we've been around for 19 years. In our venue, our main venue is the Unitarian Church of Vancouver at 49th and Oak, and we present 4 chamber music concerts every year, which is small ensemble music, classical music. But in addition to that, we've been putting on children's shows off and on over the years, and we've presented many different shows which combine not only classical music but also storytelling and various classical stories, folk tales, fairy tales we've presented over the years to our audience. And some of these shows we've presented in different venues as well throughout the community. So
what percentage of your work is children related?
Oh, I don't know the exact percentage.
Trick question.
Yeah, trick question. Well, we have our 4 concerts that we do plus 1 extra. So what is that
usually?
Percentage?
So
yeah.
I guess it would be 25. You do 5, and then so one of them is children. I get it. 20. Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's so awesome that you do children's music. Had you always done children's music, or was it adults?
It didn't start out that way. We started out with just doing the adult, chamber music concerts, though we do get kids coming to our shows, but those are just regular classical concerts. And I got interested in doing something for children because I'm also an educator as well as being a pianist and a director of this series. I'm also teach piano, but I teach preschool music and young children music classes, and in these classes I combine music with movement, creative movement, and storytelling. And I started the storytelling many years ago when I had a really unruly class of kids that were mostly composed of boys and weren't listening to a word I said. And it was one of those situations. I was very young at the time and not that experienced a teacher, and I thought, what am I going to do? And so I opened my mouth, and what came out was, once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack. And I told Jack and the Beanstalk. And all of a sudden, you could hear a pin drop. And those boys, so 8 boys in this class of 3 to 5-year-old boys, just suddenly were absolutely with me. And a bit of fee-fi-fo-fum steps around the room soon settled them down. And I recognized in that moment the power of stories and the power of telling stories, the immediacy, the freshness of it, spontaneity of it, and how it really reached at a deep level. And so from that day on, I've always used stories in my music classes, and I use lots of music in there too, and rhymes and songs, and we as a group of kids tell the stories together. And that one has gone on for several years in 2 different provinces. I've had a long career, and eventually I thought I wanted to take this to the stage. And so I've been part of a creative process of building several shows, and Ross and I are currently involved in doing one right now.
Wow. That's funny. You'd maybe think it was the magic beans that settled the children from that story, but what do you think it is that so engages the children about storytelling?
Well, it is kind of the magic beans.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's the magic of the story, and it's funny you say that, magic beans. I tell that story every spring, actually, with my preschool classes, and do you know what I give them at the end of the year?
What is it?
I give them, as their little award, I give them a little baggie, and inside each baggie are 3 magic beans. They're real beans that you can plant in the garden.
Isn't that funny? I didn't even know that when I asked you that question.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Ross, I was going to ask you, I know that in this production of Peter and the Wolf, you, as a group, have done some changes. Can you tell us a little bit more about the changes that you've done to the production?
Part of the changes were involved with figuring out which instruments that we could have on stage, which instruments that we'd be able to play and fit together. The wolf, for example, is in the original production is played by the French horns, 3 French horns. And I'm not a French horn player, I play the woodwinds. And so by using an alto sax, which is in the same sound range and a little bit richer sound than a French horn, we're able to combine that with the piano for that part of it. I chose not to play oboe in the production and use a soprano sax instead, partly because of the logistics of juggling so many different reed instruments and trying to keep them all wet on the stage and keep them in shape to play and things like that. So, but the soprano sax I thought sounded very nice for the sound of the duck, and it added some character to it and a little bit jazzier perhaps. I also chose not to go in the double reed route with the bassoon and use a bass clarinet for the grandfather. So I still use the regular clarinet for the cat, and did the part of the bird, of course, on the flute, which is a very wicked thing to practice, and it's part of orchestral excerpts that we're all learning all the time and teaching to our students. And then we had the piano. I worked with Alan on the arrangement of the Alan being the piano player, about which parts I would play, which parts I couldn't play, which parts I couldn't get to fast enough because of the changes. And he played the part of the Peter, which was played by the violin and some of the other sort of connecting things, as well as accompanying all these instruments together. Right.